Are the New York Mets really serious about playing Jeff McNeil in center field? And could Francisco Alvarez return as early as this upcoming series? We're going to talk about that and more on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now, the New York Mets lost back-to-back games for the first time all season yesterday. They also snapped their series winning streak. They had won 4 series in a row, but the Twins took 2 of 3 in Minnesota. If you're looking for a game recap or some of my criticism of Juan Soto and what I thought was maybe his worst game in a Mets uniform so far, some real missed opportunities in that one, I did a live stream right after the game that you can find on YouTube and also on your podcast feed. So today we are getting into the upcoming series and also 2 players that are going to be back in the lineup for the Mets very, very soon, Jeff McNeil and Francisco Alvarez. And the news on Jeff McNeil is very interesting because today on Thursday, he will be playing another rehab game with the St. Lucie Mets. He'll be starting in center field. Now, McNeil has played a little bit of center field for the Mets. All of those games were played in 2023 when the Mets were out of it. So I don't know how much we can take from the fact that he's played 3 games and started 2, and he has yet to play a complete game in center field in his big league career. I'd have to go back and let's actually look if there's any minor league exposure, because we'll talk in a second about if it makes any sense to have Jeff McNeil in center field instead of Luisangel Acuna. Why would they ever go that route? So let me see if there's some minor league exposure that I am missing before I just go into the fact that this is probably just an emergency basis thing. So looking at the fielding numbers in the minor leagues for Jeff McNeil, let's see. Minor leagues, 3 games, 12 innings. Major leagues, 3 games, 16 innings. Luisangel Acuna played 31 games in center field last year, and those are complete games for the most part that he was playing in center. So he's got more experience. To me, this is not something that is indicative of the Mets considering Jeff McNeil their starting center fielder when he comes back. And here's what Carlos Mendoza said about it. He said, "This is nothing new for him. He's played there before, but we want to take advantage of this opportunity in the minor leagues. He's on board with it, so he'll get a game tomorrow in center." Mendoza added, "Well, we just felt like since he's down there right now, why not use this opportunity to get him some exposure there?" To me, it's that simple as far as why they are doing this. And it's just a matter of, okay, this is another tool that Carlos Mendoza can have in his toolkit when he gets up and the Mets are this new version of themselves with McNeil and Alvarez part of the roster without Jose Siri. And center field is going to be an ongoing question for the Mets. That's why I talked about it, with Luisangel Acuna a couple days ago, because they're going to have to figure something out unless Tyrone Taylor starts to hit. They're going to need to try some other combinations. You could theoretically see Jeff McNeil start in center field, play the first 6 innings out there, and then you put Tyrone Taylor at the end of games, especially if it's close. So you want to have the guy that can run down that fly ball in the gap that could save you the game. Jeff McNeil is not necessarily going to do that. At the same time, he's a great outfielder. I really do believe that Jeff McNeil in the corners right now on this team, I'd almost venture to say he'd probably be their best defensive outfielder in the corners. Nimmo is pretty solid in left, but Jeff McNeil has a better arm. Juan Soto has been okay out there, but we know he's definitely not known for the glove. I think both Jesse Winker and Starling Marte's best days defensively are behind them. Jeff McNeil, what he has going for him when he's in the outfield is he just gets great reads. He gets really good jumps on fly balls. And so can he hold his own in center field? Absolutely. Do I think it would make sense to play him in center and Acuna at second base? Probably not. Now, the argument for that alignment, if the Mets ever were to go that route, would be the fact that Luisangel Acuna is maybe that much more superior than Jeff McNeil is at second base, if they think that the gap between McNeil and Acuna at second base is larger than the gap would be in center field, if they think that because McNeil is a more accomplished outfielder, that he'd be able to get really good reads and make up for the lack of athleticism compared to Acuna, and you think that there is not as big of a gap that way, but Acuna is this elite defensive second baseman, maybe that makes some sense. But I really think when you have Juan Soto in right field, you want some speed in center. So I still believe that once this roster comes together, if there's a guy that's going to be going out to center field and taking some playing time from Tyrone Taylor, I still think it's going to be Luis Angel Acuna. At the same time, I also think that the fact that McNeil is going out to center field for a game and that could be an option for the Mets, it does lead me to wonder if the Mets are considering not bringing up a Jose Azocar, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next segment as it relates to Francisco Alvarez, who could potentially be up as soon as tomorrow or today as you guys are listening to this. I have a sneaking suspicion that he might be coming up sooner than we think. So I'll get to that in a minute. But when it comes to Jose Azocar and his function on the roster, once you get to that point, he's not going to give you much other than defense and speed. And if you have Acuna already providing some of that, if you have Tyrone Taylor already providing some of that, when are you going to get Azocar in the lineup? So does that mean the Mets would prefer to have Brett Baty on the roster than Jose Azocar? Now, Baty has not played well. Absolutely not. Granted, he is coming off one of his better games of the season. First time he's gotten 2 hits in a game on Wednesday. Played great defense at third base again. And I think the Mets probably like, in some respects, the idea of being able to go to a lineup where Mark Vientos is DHing and Brett Baty's at third, or just simply being able to not force Vientos in the lineup every single day, as he has struggled to start the season, not quite as much as Baty, but there has been struggles there. And Brett Baty does give you a superior glove at that position. Although Vientos has made his strides, and I think he is definitely a passable defensive first baseman. At times, he flashes better than that with his arm. You still watch Brett Baty play third, and you can see the difference, in my opinion. So I think part of this is viewing a backup third baseman who has more upside with his bat, granted we haven't seen it, as more valuable than Jose Azocar. And maybe they just think that Brett Baty is a better player. And the other day when Carlos Mendoza was asked about Brett Baty's struggles, one of the things that struck me is he said he's a good player. And I know that you're going to say that, but you're not going to say, oh, yeah, this guy sucks on my roster. Of course not. But there was something about the conviction in which he said that still leads me to believe that there's a lot of people in this organization that believe in Brett Baty, that believe in what Brett Baty can do. Have we seen it? No. But I think there's still some holding out of hope that this guy can figure it out and shake off this rough start and find a way to be a decent bat for them, in which case I do think he'd provide more to your roster than Jose Azocar, where I just think Azocar is just a placeholder on this roster. I think if he's on the roster, it's not going to play, where you might be able to find some opportunities for Baty. And then as that relates to Jeff McNeil, maybe a Mets team that's struggling to find offense at some point, maybe if Baty starts swinging a little bit, maybe there is a world a couple weeks from now down the road where if Brett Baty has started to figure it out, they want to start him for a game at second and throw Jeff McNeil in center field. So I just think it's about giving Carlos Mendoza plenty of options. And one of the options that we haven't even talked about with center field is simply just playing Brandon Nimmo at what was at one point his natural position in center field. I think the Mets are hesitant to do that, particularly on a consistent basis, just because you have a guy that had plantar fasciitis, and that's not something that just goes away. He still has it. He's managing it. He has his feet in a good spot right now, but it's not like it's something that can't get re-aggravated and start to show up again. And he had a knee issue in spring training. He's been out there for every game, and if not every inning, nearly every inning up to this point this season. He has, definitely been able to shake off any concern about his health, but you want to protect Brandon Nimmo. I know he's not swinging it well yet. He's going to come around. I think the Mets would prefer not to play Nimmo in center field just because of the extra wear and tear that it puts on your body. And so having Jeff McNeil as another option makes some sense. Again, do I think that Jeff McNeil is going to consistently play center field at any point this season? No. Do I think Jeff McNeil even gets a start in center field this season? I really don't know, because again, it had to be such a specific set of circumstances where you'd either want, Beatty at second base and you'd want and I guess you're not playing Acuna for whatever reason, and you want McNeil at center field, Vientos at third, or maybe there's a game where you just say, you know what, we're gonna DH Vientos, play Beatty at third, play Acuna at second, and play McNeil at center. And maybe that's the best offensive version of this team if Jesse Winker and Starling Marte aren't hitting in that DH spot, and if Acuna and Beatty and Vientos all pick it up. Maybe. But really, I think that this is just about taking advantage of an opportunity to see what it looks like, to see if it's a possibility at some point if you are just starved for production in center. What I still believe is going to happen ultimately is Jeff McNeil is going to come up. He's going to be the regular second baseman, and Luis Angel Acuna is going to start to see some time in center field while still getting some starts at second base. I think he'll jump between both positions, and if he keeps hitting the way he has over the past week, he might be able to be a regular for this team right now. I mean, there's absolutely that possibility that's out there. But for the time being, I think this is simply an experiment, or even just taking advantage of an opportunity to see what it looks like. And McNeil is going to be a primary second baseman when he comes back. With that said, it is still interesting to try to figure out what the Mets are going to do with this roster when they are fully healthy. Is Jose Azocar going to play in this upcoming series? Or could we see Francisco Alvarez back earlier than expected? I want to explain why that could be a possibility for this upcoming series. We'll get to that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports, College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? Well, a Fire TV Stick device is more affordable and easier to travel with, and allowing you to take your games wherever you plug in. I know me and my friends love EA Sports College Football 25. We have the connected, franchise or dynasty. We all are head coaches of different teams. And when one of us goes out of town, it's always frustrating because the league stops. Well, once I found out about this, I told my buddies, listen, bring your Fire TV Stick with you and we can keep on playing. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, that's second gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, first and second gen, and Fire TV Cube, third gen. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing better than catching an MLB game live, and the New York Mets are back in town. So get out to the ballpark. Game Time's making it easier than ever to get tickets to your favorite live sports events with last-minute tickets, all-in pricing, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the stress out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, the ticket prices drop as game time gets closer, meaning you can score an incredible deal. So take the 7 train, get down to the ballpark, and once you're there, you just pull open the app. You're walking into the stadium. You view the seat map. You can look at your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You can buy tickets in a matter of seconds. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Down the Game Time app, current account. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, credit account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get to our next goal of 13,000 subscribers. We are nearly there, within 100, so I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. And also, watching the video today, throw a comment on there. Do you think that Jeff McNeil will start a game in center field this year? I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. Let's talk about Francisco Alvarez. The Mets avoided the disaster. He got hit in the hand on Tuesday in his first game with the Binghamton Rumble Ponies, the same hand that he broke his hamate bone in. I told you on yesterday's show, he can't refracture that specific bone, as when you break it, they just do the surgery and take that entire bone out of your hand. You don't need it. With that said, it was still nerve-wracking just waiting to find out, is Alvarez okay? Carlos Mendoza confirmed before the Mets afternoon game on Wednesday that he would be in the lineup in Binghamton. He played the whole game for the Rumble Ponies, went 1 for 4 with a walk and 2 RBIs, drove in a pair of runs with a single in the 7th inning. And again, the big news was that he played the entire game. The Mets said that before Alvarez came back, he had to play back-to-back. Well, he played back-to-back games Tuesday and Wednesday. So I am wondering, would the Mets consider bringing Alvarez back right now? He is a healthy player. He's playing full games behind the dish. And the Mets had to make some roster moves today. So the good news is Griffin Canning, who was sick, and that's why he didn't make a start on Wednesday, apparently he's good to go. So he'll start on Thursday. So that's it. One crisis averted, but the Mets still have to make some roster moves. Jose Siri is going to go on the IL, might go on the 60-day IL for all we know. They'll probably start him on the 10-day, but whenever the Mets need a 40-man spot, which I think they still have 2 available, so they probably won't jump to that. But bottom line is he's going to be out of the picture for some time, and because of that roster rule that we talked about on yesterday's show, the Mets are able to bring Max Kranick right back up after being assigned to AAA for 1 game, because he'll be replacing an injured player on the roster. So that's the obvious move that's going to happen. Jose Siri to the IL, Max Kranick back on the active roster. With that said, the Mets would then have too many pitchers. So Justin Hagenman is going to go back to AAA. Who will replace him? It's got to be a position player. Now, Jose Azocar was not in the lineup for Syracuse on Tuesday. Wednesday, they got rained out. So at this point, I don't know if he was in Syracuse or if he wasn't in Syracuse. He does make sense if you want another center fielder. But if the Mets feel like right now with Acuna and Nimmo, they have enough coverage and Tyrone Taylor being the regular in center field, they could instead say, you know what, let's not add Azocar to the 40-man roster and just have him on our active roster for the rest of this week. And then at Jeff McNeil, it's good to go on Monday. Got to DFA him again. Why do that when instead you could just roster Alvarez right now? And you can roll with 3 catchers for the rest of the week. That would allow you to still hit Luis Torrens or Alvarez off the bench when they're not playing. So if you wanted to on Thursday, Torrens could still start and Alvarez could come off the bench if you need a pinch hitter at some big spot in the game. It does make some sense to me to do it. And I looked last year, Alvarez got 6 games of rehab when he came back from, was it the wrist injury? He's gotten 5 games of rehab so far, and again, has already played back-to-back, which was the big box to check. Sure, originally they wanted him to play back-to-back full games, but I don't think that those 2 innings or 3 innings that he missed at the end of the game because he got hit in the hand and they just took him out for precautionary reasons are really going to impact his ability to now hop into a full big league game. And Alvarez is chomping at the bits to come back. So I would not be surprised at all if the Mets decide to roll with 3 catchers until Jeff McNeil comes back. And then when McNeil comes back, they would drop Hayden Sanger, and that would be your team. Luis Torrens is still going to play. So this gives you an opportunity to play both of these guys for a little bit until McNeil can come back because you have that flexibility off the bench. And then it's going to be a timeshare, and that'll be really interesting to see how much Torrens still gets in there. Are the Mets going to go with 2 games in a series for Alvarez, 1 for Torrens? I could see that until Alvarez really gets into the rhythm of the season and if Torrens starts to slow down offensively. But up to this point, Torrens has been the Mets' 3rd best hitter. You look at OPS, you got Pete Alonso, who's leading the National League with an OPS of 1.204. Juan Soto, after his 0 for 5 game on Wednesday, has that OPS down to 798. Then you got Torrens at 785. He's hitting 275, 310 on base, 475 slug, 5 doubles, 1 home run, 5 RBIs. My assumption would probably be that he is right behind Pete Alonso in doubles. I think Pete has at least 5, if not 6 already. So Those two guys have been hitting a lot of extra base hits, and he's been incredibly solid behind the dish as well. So I still think you're going to play Torrens. Sanger's obviously going to go down. He's only hitting 227, 534 OPS. I thought he has been really good for what the Mets needed as a backup catcher. And I don't imagine he would play for the rest of the week if Alvarez did come up. Like, he's not going to get a start, but it just gives you that third catcher so you have the ability to use these guys as pinch hitters potentially if you decide to go that direction. Now, Jose Azocar could still come up, and they could keep Alvarez on rehab if they wanted to, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal if Alvarez got into 2 more games of Binghamton to get a couple more at bats, and then on Sunday or Saturday or whatever it is, they decide to make a roster move, and at that point they can just make the move for Sanger, and then when McNeil's ready to go, you could either sub McNeil for Azocar, or if you want to keep the extra outfielder, you could put McNeil on the roster and drop Brett Beatty down. Those are the decisions that the Mets will be making this week, if not bleeding into next week, depending on McNeil. But it definitely seems like Alvarez is closer to coming back. And again, I would not be surprised if we got that shocking report today. Francisco Alvarez activated. And it would be a lot of fun to see him get back in the lineup in front of some fans at Citi Field. Again, as I mentioned, Griffin Canning will start the game tonight. Now, that sets up the rotation very well. That was another big kind of topic of discussion yesterday was, all right, well, what are the Mets going to do here? How are they going to navigate this rotation and get Kodai Senga his extra rest? Griffin Canning being able to pitch after being sick is huge. So he goes on Thursday. David Peterson gets an extra day. He goes on Friday. Kodai Senga on 5 days rest goes on Saturday, turns back over to Clay Holmes on Sunday. Then it'll be McGill on Monday. And I would imagine the Mets would be comfortable letting Canning and Peterson both pitch on 4 days rest. If they are, they would go Tuesday and Wednesday. You'd have an off day on Thursday. So Kodai Senga would get that extra day. And you would not need to insert a 6th starter into the rotation until May 30th, when Paul Blackburn may finally be ready. If not, maybe Hagenman gets another opportunity. Who knows? But what this means for the Mets right now is they get to keep that bullpen that's been so great this year together for at least another couple weeks. That is the huge development with Canning being able to start. Now, with that said, that bullpen's tired. And so it's going to be a lot of pressure on Canning to eat up some innings in this one. And same thing goes for David Peterson and Kodai Senga to try to reset things and get them refreshed a little bit, because they won't have that off day where everybody gets a breather until a week from today, next Thursday. So the bullpen has to catch up on a little bit of rest. I want to preview this upcoming series, Mets versus Cardinals, a 4-game set. I'll tell you the Cardinals' strengths, their weaknesses, and how the Mets can get things back on track. First, though, another quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Basketball and hockey playoffs are heating up. There's no better way to turn your sports knowledge into real rewards than with Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and you're in. You can even combine your players across sports, basketball, hockey, baseball, and more for your chance to win up to 2,000 times your cash. And one thing I like about Prize Picks, you can go with the flex play or a power play, and that saved me yesterday. As you're all listening to this on a Thursday. On Wednesday, I had a combination of Juan Soto in my fantasy lineup. Not great for his fantasy points. He obviously didn't get there. But I went flex play, which means I only needed 2 of my 3 players to hit their projections. Zach Levine, 3.5 threes. I had more. Tyler Hero, 1.5 threes. I had more. Both of those ended up coming in, and so I still was able to win. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. If you are an everyday listener to the show, make sure to become a Locked On Mets insider. It's our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways, and you get the lineup graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so the Cardinals coming to town with a 500 record. They are 9-9 on the season, but they're coming off a very good homestand where they won 2 series. They beat the Phillies first. Thank you, St. Louis, for that one. And then they beat the Astros in their most recent series. Now, so far to get to that 9-9, it has been mostly success at home. They are 8-4 when they play in St. Louis and 1-5 when they play on the road. Hopefully those trends continue in New York this weekend. The Cardinals have a good offense, a much better one than the Mets to start out the season. Really, it's top 5 in baseball in both runs scored and OPS. They actually have the 3rd best OPS in the game at 783. The Mets only have 3 hitters with an OPS over 783. Torrens, Soto, Alonso. So that's going to be something interesting to watch. The Mets pitching, which has been outstanding this year, going up against a Cardinals lineup that has been very good. Why have they been very good? Brendan Donovan is on fire. He's hitting 380 with a 965 OPS. Lars Nootbaar and Nolan Arenado both having very good bounce back seasons. Nootbaar 885 OPS. Arenado 855 OPS. Not a great home run hitting team, but the Mets aren't either. It'll be interesting to see how this pitching staff tries to slow some of those hot bats. Meanwhile, on the pitching front, the Cardinals are more middle of the pack. Their starter ERA of 3.91 is 13th in baseball. Their reliever ERA of 4.30 is near the bottom third of the league at 22nd. So a better rotation than a bullpen potentially. They do have Ryan Helsley, one of the best closers in baseball, so you don't want to go into the 9th inning trailing. Game 1, it'll be Andre Palante versus Griffin Canning. Now, Palante has got off to a great start this season, 2.20 ERA through 3 starts, and his last start was his best one on the year. 7 scoreless, allowed 2 hits, 2 walks. I think he only struck out 4. Not a big strikeout pitcher. He's a ground ball guy. Last year, pitched to a 3.78 ERA and 121 and a third innings pitched. He got ground balls 62% of the time last year. That ranked up near the top of the league. When it comes to this season, his ground ball rate so far is 70%. So that's what he wants to do. 4-seam fastball, sinker, really good slider. Whiff rate on this season over 50% on his slider. So he has had that pitch locked in to start out the season. So it's going to be an interesting matchup for the Mets. Granted, they did a pretty good job against him last year. They scored 5 runs in 4 2/3 innings pitched. And you saw Francisco Alvarez had a pretty nice day. Tyrone Taylor drove in 3 runs. Jeff McNeil had a couple hits in that game as well as the bottom of the lineup in that one. They got the job done. The Mets beat the Cardinals 6-0 during that game in August. And Sean Manaea, man, it made me sad to see this just because I miss him, went 7 scoreless with 10 strikeouts. So Mets haven't got a performance quite like that this year. Kodai Senga was great against the A's, but he didn't have double-digit strikeouts. So we'll see what Griffin Canning can do. I would not expect 7 scoreless with 10 Ks, but he's going to need to give the Mets some length because this bullpen is tired, as I've mentioned. Jose Butto is probably going to be unavailable through 43 pitches. Huascar Brazoban, I don't know if he's going to be available. He only threw 18 pitches, so maybe there is a chance that Brazoban, who's got a little bit of a rubber arm, could go again. Stanek threw over 20 pitches. We'll see if he can go. Typically, he might be okay for a back-to-back. AJ Minter has not thrown a back-to-back all year. This might be the time for his first one, depending on how the game goes. Max Kranick, we expect to be back on this roster, but he threw 31 pitches. Now, 2 days ago, maybe an inning, but I don't think multiple innings are going to be available out of him. Danny Young threw 25 pitches that same day. So is he going to be good to go for more than an inning? Probably not. Reed Garrett is probably the freshest pitcher in this bullpen. He only threw 3 pitches in extra innings before he gave up that walk-off hit to the Twins. So maybe Garrett's the guy that can get you more than 3 outs, but the Mets are really going to be piecing it together, just trying to get through this game. Hopefully Griffin Canning can get the Mets through at least 5, and then you piece it together the best you can. Hope that you can give some guys some rest to then be able to get through the game on Friday. And again, this is where David Peterson and Kodai Senga are going to be very critical in this series. It is crucial that those 2 guys give the Mets some length to give this bullpen a breather in the middle of this series. And those are the 2 games where the Mets have a clear pitching advantage. Miles Mikolas, who has got an ERA of 9 to start the season, going up against David Peterson on Friday night. Saturday, it'll be Matthew Liberatore going up against Kodai Senga. Liberatore's gotten off to a decent start, but he's not an ace like Senga. And then once you get to Sunday, that's where it might tip back into the Cardinals' favor. They'll have Sonny Gray on the mound versus Clay Holmes, although we do know that Clay Holmes has a lot of ability to step up and potentially pitch a really nice game. I'm still waiting on the 6 shutout innings from Clay Holmes that I feel like he's been knocking on the door of, and maybe we finally see it this weekend. I'll be previewing each of these games as we go throughout the weekend. You will have me with the show every single morning at 6 a.m. breaking down what happened in the game, what potential news items we have to discuss, and of course, always keeping our eye on the minor league slate. The Mets open up this 7-game homestand, very critical to get back to their winning ways against the Cardinals. So they are riding some momentum because they'll have their biggest series of the season up to this point starting on Monday, where the Phillies will come into town. Right now, the Mets are holding a 1-game lead over the Phillies in the NL East. Obviously, it's early, so a lot of time left, but you want to sort of hold serve and show that you are able to go toe-to-toe with what right now looks like your fiercest competition in this division by a long shot, because who knows what's going on with the Braves. They're 5-13 to start the season. I'm sure they'll be better than that, but they've dug themselves an early hole. And meanwhile, you have the Marlins and the Nationals have been scrappy, but no one really thinks they have the legs to really stay competitive all year. So this very well could be a division that comes down to the Mets and the Phillies. So that series on Monday is one that we can circle and get really excited about. In the meantime, though, you got to handle business against the Cardinals first. So you are going into that series at your best. And we'll see if and when the Mets get Alvarez back in this upcoming series. When McNeil is ready to return, it would be great if both those guys are back in the fold for that series against Philly. As always, thank you all for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on social media at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.